This is Nisha M., your geek mom, coming to you with Louis Lacal from Man Bites Media and myself from Diversely Geek. And we are joined by two fantastic guests tonight. We have the Nerdy Chap and Molly B. Marcus. Hello, everyone.
Hi there.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hey, my enthusiasm is really big. What happened to yours?
Oh, I'm enthusiastic to delve into this.
I know you are. I was trying to automatically open the show with this really light atmosphere.
Because it goes get dark.
We have it diffused from the very get-go, my friend. From the get-go. You see? You guys did not go with my thing. Okay, cool.
You're gonna be our balance to the dark, you know? We gotta focus in on the dark side, and you gotta be the light side of the moon.
I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me, so we're all good. Okay, so it's gonna be a very I would say a bit of a different take on how we do our Doctor Who in review, because we're really going more into the psyche, the psychology, or basically into the storytelling and the story arcs, and then going in basically with the fundamental principle and the common ground being Chris Chibnall. So tonight, each of us are going to be giving our take on him as a showrunner and the story arcs and the storytelling, whether it's visual, etc. I'm definitely going to be the ballast tonight because, Molly and I, of course, the long-term Whovian, so we're going to see how we balance between that. And today's discussion is we're just going to have the opportunity to give our thoughts personally and then have conversations about each other's points of views and then really see where we go from there. Because we are Whovians, right? So, and that's in and of itself the number one amazing thing is that being a Whovian is such a strong connective passion for people throughout the world. So, yeah, right? I think everyone agrees with that. So,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like meeting someone in an airport randomly and they have a Doctor Who on, next thing you know, you're having a full conversation. Anyway, so I digress. So let's go with this. It's going to be a very interesting take on how we do this. We're going to go ahead and ask each of you to give, and that would be the three of you. I will, again, be the ballast tonight, okay? Kind of like the person on the other end of the debate. Let's go ahead and give one or two, or perhaps more, which we can work in, of your points of views on the Chibnall era, bearing in mind what we've seen in the past. And I want to definitely focus on storytelling, story arcs, visual appeal, and then the fundamental principle of the Doctor. How was that story told? How well do you think it was managed? And
I got a nice intro for that to segue into everybody else's conversation.
So you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'll go in first. So I wrote up basically kind of each episode. I did like a little review, like an actual written review and all that stuff on a notepad, and created the patterns and saw the patterns that I saw. And I want to go with the actual structure of each episode and how he did it and how predictable it was in this show run for season 11. It's introduce villain / characters, introduce problem, kill someone to prove threat, which in previous episodes he replaced the kill person and put a countdown, random countdown, and sudden unexplainable character shift in behavior, and completely changes and completely out of the blue for these characters, and he calls it in the name of teaching these characters, but we had no previous history to these teachings. And suddenly a deus ex machina, which is usually the screwdriver of the Doctor, that saves the day, and that's the end of the story. No wrap-up, no last act in the story. And this is Chibnall from the beginning of Doctor Who. It's predictable, but now this is on the positive side. I think that the stories in this season were done very purposefully, and it was done with a message to teach, which a lot of us that have grown up with Doctor Who already, and we knew already Doctor Who and all that stuff, and we've already experienced these life lessons. We're looking back on it and like, why are you telling us this? Why are you preaching to the choir already? But we have to remember these are shows for kids. They're teaching kids parables. They're teaching them how to behave in public, how to behave in society and all that stuff. So that I could see the point of the season for a new generation of Whovian. But the parallels and the predictability is there, which that is where I'm lost in this season. And it's just it loses its way, and it loses itself as Doctor Who because of the predictability on every single episode.
Okay, so we're going to hold on any comments on Lewis. Yeah. So we're going to go with Molly. You want to go ahead?
Sure. So just to piggyback off of what Lewis was saying. So when they were trying to tease about Chibnall coming on and being the showrunner, they had basically said it's all going to be about risk and boldness. Right? I didn't see a lot of risk. I didn't really see a lot of bold. What I saw was him wanting to kind of shift the show, to Lewis's point, to teaching. I disagree a little bit that it's for kids. I think it's for all ages primarily. I think that lessons can be taken away for all ages. But I don't necessarily think it's just for kids. But there's a lot of longtime fans, including within some of our group, who are disappointed with the writing. And I think that he really wanted to bring in some more diversity. He wanted to bring in some more, for lack of a better word, all the PC stuff, right? And I don't know whether that backfired or not. I don't know whether that alienated a huge segment of Whovians. I don't know if they were purposely doing this to make way for new Whovians. So kind of my take on Chibnall was, I think he thought he was taking a risk. I'm not so sure that the risk has paid off yet. But as with all doctors, it always takes at least 1 year for them to warm up.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Did you have a very specific one or two points that you thought that were consistent throughout the story arc, storytelling, and the visual perspective?
Definitely pushing the diversity, right? So you had the Punjab show, you had the Rosa Parks show, really kind of pushing, trying to bring it more into, I think, a digestible realm for people to understand what the Doctor is about, more than just fighting space aliens. About trying to create fairness and some amount of equality and diversity.
Very good. That's very, very interesting. Okay. So, Richard, Nerdy Chap, ready to go?
Yeah. Just piggybacking on everyone's thoughts and everything, what I will say is what I have is Chibnall top 5 patterns. And I have them all listed out and I can give clear-cut examples as the podcast goes on. But the top 5 are: number 5, super predictable death. Lewis mentioned that. Misunderstood monsters and aliens. 3, white guys and how they are scolded. Outright villains. Outright villains or acceptable losses, meaning they're part of the predictable deaths. 2, disempowerment and victimization of women, despite this is a new era of Who. I have examples of that where I can clearly discuss that. And the number 1 Chibnall pattern is dad issues, which we see a lot in Chibnall's writings and works. Chibnall quoted himself on one interview by saying that Doctor Who is a great venue to talk about current modern day stuff and issues, and just monsters we can add to it. So like monsters are secondary to what Chibnall wants to do. And what you really kind of end up watching with Doctor Who is not sci-fi fantasy drama. You're actually watching more of British family drama. Because Chibnall is really focused about, as I said, dad issues, family relationships. You might as well just strip it all down and make this is a British drama with some sci-fi elements, instead of being a sci-fi fantasy show with a fairy tale edge, as it originally was thought of. No, it's now stripped down to being British drama with some sci-fi elements. And with Chibnall, my big complaint with Chibnall is that we have been told this is about diversity. It is a new era. But with those patterns that I can go more in depth in as the podcast goes on, I'm not really certain. I will clearly say I don't think Chibnall's your guy to lead Doctor Who into this new diverse horizon, especially what's been done in season 11 with a audience score of 22% on Rotten Tomatoes, and just for resolution alone, 15% audience score. And there's a reason besides just simply angry white men. It's that a lot of the audience, diehard Whovians, are not happy.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Richard. And when you were saying like the dad issues and the family value, like British drama, the first thing I thought of was Graham and oh my goodness, I'm having a brain fart.
And Ryan.
Yeah.
Graham and Ryan is Graham and Ryan is the narrative arc.
But yeah, a lot of the criticism honestly is because it's so formulaic. It is. We've approached this show as the New Who, as very kind of centered for adults, centered for young adults type of thing, and not towards the kids. And then the abrupt change into children's programming / drama, family drama, it's very jarring. And I completely understand why people are completely turned off by this season. I get it, because I see your points. But come on, you see the TARDIS fly away, and that makes up for it in the end for me, at least. I'm back in when I see the TARDIS fly away or do something, which we lacked a lot of in this season. But when you did see it, it was so enjoyable and so great. And then I can't help but just I love Doctor Who and every aspect of it. So going into the next season, I'm enthusiastic to see what they're gonna bring, and it might result in disappointment, but it might not. It might be a lot better season, because most first seasons of the Doctor have been kind of,
they're slow.
On the lower expectation side. But I want to see where they go with the story, and I just really hope that they learned from the mistakes that they made in this season, because there was a lot, and hopefully they're going to correct that in the next season, because I really am hoping for that. And if we go with a new showrunner after that, then that's on BBC, and I'll support them on it, because I'm willing to watch Doctor Who no matter who's in charge of it, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
and
I was going to, let me jump in real quick. Though we're going to see a new season 2020, my feeling, and again, hate to be the Debbie Downer here, but it seems to be my pattern so far for the reviews, is, sorry to be the cold bucket of ice water, but anyway, so far what I've seen is Doctor Who is facing its Star Wars Last Jedi moment.
Ooh.
And 2019 is going to be a lot, if they're starting already the pattern of having interview after interview trying to explain, no, it's good, and blog post after blog post after YouTube saying, no, it's not. And if this keeps up, 2020, Doctor Who might have its Solo a Star Wars story moment where it really tanks, if that's what they're generating. Let us look at our patterns of history. We've seen this with Star Wars. If BBC doesn't catch it quick, they're going to get more of a backlash, and there may be a chopping block coming and some retribution. So they need to be very careful on how they handle it come 2020. And so far, 2019, I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's my turn. I've been a little quiet, so let's. So I first of all, you're not a bucket of cold water, Richard, nerdy chap. You absolutely have a right to have your perspective. So I will tell you this: there has been time immemorial from the beginning of Doctor Who, going back to the very beginning, where there were probably less than 22% viewer ratings, because it's a very misunderstood genre. and something that is very specific to the mind and the workings of the brain of the showrunner. As a matter of fact, Doctor Who is the reason that the terminology showrunner exists in the first place. They're the ones who created the entire principle of show running. So we are looking at not the first time, not the second, not even the fifth or sixth or time that we have had a showrunner take the show in a different direction to see what grounds can be broken. You're going to definitely have perspectives on personality, on behavior, on race, on sexism, on gender, on careerism, on universal principle in general, challenged by the showrunner, because, well, to be fair, it is part of what they've been doing. And so it's not precedent setting that it's happened in season 11. It's been happening since the beginning of Doctor Who. It literally is the reason the show existed and was given the opportunity to come back and be re-aired when it was met with such poor viewer appeal the first time. So we are definitely I'm very much in agreement on the points that everyone has made in terms of this season's shortcomings or shortfalls, because as Lewis will tell you, the entire time we've done Doctor Who in review, every single show I was like, pattern, right? Didn't I keep saying it? And there's another pattern, and there's another pattern, because this whole entire season has been nothing but one predictable pattern after the other, if not 7 in one episode. Because it just is the case. It's what happened. And predictable deaths, gosh, yes, 100%. I don't think that season 11 has met the doom of the genre, or the doom of the philosophy or the fundamental sci-fi nature of Doctor Who. It's allowed to go through changes.
And actually, if we look at the viewership hasn't, everybody's talking about the viewership dipped down below the lowest numbers ever. It has not.
It absolutely has not whatsoever.
And this is not the BBC numbers that are out there that are people are criticizing because they're saying that those are the BBC numbers. No, these are the national board rating system that is actually put out by an independent council. And these numbers are still well within, I'm talking about like David Tennant numbers we're still getting, okay?
Yeah, so we really are.
We're not getting the doom of Doctor Who.
Not whatsoever.
And I don't think any of us are bringing that up. I think it's the change in, in paradigm that we've gotten hasn't been...
a big paradigm shift, yes.
Yeah, the paradigm shift that we've gotten hasn't been the paradigm shift we wanted. And I think that tackling the issues.
I think that you literally just hit it on the head. It has nothing to, it's not okay, so we watch a show, and for instance, I have watched many shows and have completely cut them off and will not go back to them. And it's not because I don't have a right to tell that showrunner or what they're doing with that show. I don't like the perspective that they have, and everyone has a right not to watch it, but then they can go back to it again. And I have done that.
But also we have to voice our opinions about it, because if we don't, then people will be, okay, they're happy with this. Let's keep, producing this.
Well, goodness gracious. Don't we all know that Chris Chibnall made his voice very well heard back in 1986 when he was on that interview, and he was the number one person to call out the showrunners at the time and say he was not happy with what they were doing. So, of course, he's going to welcome this type of feedback. He expects it, I would imagine. So,
but then he pulled off on this in this kind of entitled interview about a month ago, and he kind of like basically dismissed the fans, and that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And and I think that honestly he kind of acted like a little child, and when they brought up, specifically when the host brought up the daddy issues, and he wanted to, have you seen a psychologist about these issues? He meant it as a joke, and Chibnall got, like, he really went off on him, and he's like, how dare you say
trigger, apparently.
This is, and I was like, oh, Chibnall does have daddy issues. But that's besides the point. The fact that he actually kind of went off as this childish rant afterwards and started tackling these tweets like Mr. Orange over there, and making these tweets about things behind BBC's back is the reason that he's not going to be coming on for the next season. That's the reason why BBC wants to get rid of him, is because he's acting like a petulant child over these accusations that the fans are putting up. And let's be real, the fans all have different opinions.
Yeah, I mean, coming from...
So we talked about the super predictability as we let off with. So I do know that, I mean, if I glean my backwards in terms of my history, the entire time that we were with 10, unless River was involved here and again a companion, most of his story arc was very predictable. So in comparison to the Doctors, the forerunners for season 11, do you think that this was way over the line in terms of predictability and in terms of character depth? So we're going to focus on that. I'm going to go through the show points as you guys listed them, because I haven't. Yeah, please.
I think it depended on the subject matter of the show. Yes, in terms of overall, they were formulaic. Yes, they were predictable. You're like, oh yeah, that guy's gonna die.
Yeah.
And so, or that person's gonna die, or that character's gonna die, or creature, whatever. Because like the one where they were in the caves and the guy gets eaten by the bats. You're like, yeah, well, we saw that coming, right?
Why was that even necessary? I'm just saying. Okay, go ahead.
Right. It's right. I mean, to me, it was just like gratuitous, you know, and I felt like that cheapened the show.
I kind of enjoyed those deaths.
You would miss the horror.
Well, I'll compare it. Like, okay, so old Who, they did a lot of predictability and silliness and a lot of goofiness, granted. But TV was just kind of like that back then. TV was more formulaic. I think we have a chance now in the modern age to get beyond some of that in our storytelling. So to your point, Nisha, I would have preferred less of that, because I think we can do better. I think the showrunners can do better than before.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm actually right on point with you on this one. I thought it was absolutely unnecessary. That if he wanted to be bold, he could have been bolder in much other ways than what he did. It wasn't through death. Although we're going to get it. It's the show. So anyone, I know, Louis, you and I talked about a lot about it. And of course, Nerdy Chap, jump in on this one too. Misunderstood monsters, aliens.
Hold on. I wanted to tackle the predictable deaths.
Goodness gracious. This is only a 45-minute show, my friends. Okay, let's go.
No, I want to tackle that because honestly, like the point that Molly brought up, it's very true. It feels like an episode of I Love Lucy with space aliens. And it's like, all right, I enjoy I Love Lucy because it's just awesome and an awesome character behind it. But God, that show was very predictable and it was very formulaic, and that's what I felt with this show. And the deaths and everything are just kind of on point with that. It's like you don't know why do that. I mean, I enjoy a death like anybody else would, but oh God, come on, like. At least make it a little bit more interesting than that, and then show something. Don't just zoom away. I'm like, oh, come on. I wanted to see him get eaten by the monster. At least give me that.
Well, Louis, actually, to answer your question, here's two thoughts about this particular pattern, which is, one, the easiest way for a writer to establish that a villain is a threat is for them to kill someone off. It's just basic writer cliche. So if I want to say my monster's, evil, it's easy to just kill someone off. And that's why those characters purely exist to be victims. Prime example is Salad Guy from Woman Who Fell to Earth, who came up to the Stenza and just went, eat my salad. You know this guy's going to die.
Yeah.
So, but what was it to establish? Oh, the Stenza guy, he's a threat. I mean, he does stuff.
And Chibnall in every other episode, he used the countdown as a threat. And every single episode, he has a countdown previous to this season. And the
countdown goes back to 42, which is where he kind of started the pattern to begin with.
Yeah.
You actually have a visible countdown in David Tennant's episode of 42 that was written by Chibnall. The other pattern is the predictable deaths are also used to motivate the hero or hero characters to do something. And once again, the character is purely made a victim to provide motivation. examples of this where we see, in general of TV is like when the police partner dies and they say, oh, only 2 days away from retirement. Well, that gives motivation to the partner to avenge them. Or how about this predictable death in this series 11? The woman who has big dreams for the future when a killer is on the loose. Kira in Kablam. Or a significant other like a spouse who dies to motivate one or more main characters. Grace in Woman Who Fell to Earth. These individuals at the end of the day aren't characters.
Of the episode.
Yeah, they merely exist as props to further the story and are part of a bad story cliche. That is what they're mainly used for. They're either A, to motivate the main characters to do something, to act. Another classic example is Song in Battle of Ranskor Av Kolot. Let me get that right. Ranskor. Yeah, your first death is Song, an Asian woman who's just there, shows up on screen and screams to die for them to go, ooh, there's a threat. Oh, it's that Stenza guy from before. Oh, but she's purely there just to die. She is there to make the villain threatening and there to make the characters act. That is all his predictable deaths are for.
And misunderstood monsters are for. Because they kind of build the same point. They build the same motivation towards the monsters are misunderstood. They're not bad guys. Why are we looking at them like bad guys? And then the real bad guy emerges. So it kind of makes that real villain or quote-unquote villain the real threat. And that makes it that much more threatening because the one that they thought was the threat wasn't. And, you could do that in one episode because, all right, cool, awesome twist, Night Shyamalan twist. Every episode, it becomes formulaic. He's
done it he's done it 5 times clearly in this season. Arachnids in the UK, spiders. The Pating and the Saranga Conundrum. The Vajarian Assassins and Demons of the Punjab. The Kablam Man robots and the System in Kablam. And the Solo Track and Takes You Away. All of them are monsters of the week who aren't really monsters of the week.
Okay, so we went straight into our next point. That was pretty good. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm agreeing with you on this one. We had a very I think it was pretty awesome conversation where we were trying to look at what was Chibnall's take on what a villain is, because he completely. I'm not saying he rewrote the definition of what it is to be a villain, but he villainized not characters but actions, principles, morality, concepts, and so we felt that was a huge overlying arc through the entire season and ended up carrying the storytelling along more than the sci-fi behind the villainous character, which I think is what everyone is missing because we love to sink our teeth into those villainous characters and see where it's going from there. So
the master or Mercy or whoever, he doesn't have an equal. She doesn't have an equal.
And in this episode, very much so. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say the Doctor doesn't have a nemesis. Except that the only one that the Doctor had was the Daleks, and that was in the news.
I mean, it
technically wasn't even in the series.
There was no real threat in this season, and it really hasn't been like, oh, I'm worried about the companions; they're gonna die. No, not at all. Even in the second episode where they're in the middle of space, they kind of diffused that situation immediately when they could have done something different that would have made it more tension building, created more tension,
created more
that whole
anxiety.
Episode is completely messed up pacing wise.
Let's
be real. They destroyed the possible characters that they could have built out and made actual threats. The toilet paper of doom, I mean, that would have been a really cool monster.
Oh my gosh. I agree. The Ghost Monument, I think, was chock full of wonderful potential for us to really, really get some wonderful characters that I mean, we watch it to get some level of anxiety, and get our hearts pumping there, but we don't certainly get it as much as we'd like, sir.
Yeah. I like how they connected the Ghost Monument to the end because the Doctor brings it up again. You know,
Yeah.
I have my own ghost monument.
Yeah.
You know, and so they were trying to tie it in. It just was weak, but they were trying to tie it in. And to your earlier point, Lewis, I still get all the feels when I hear that TARDIS. Because to me,
it's great. I mean, come on, when you hear it, you're just like, oh yes. And especially at the end of that episode. Especially at the end of that episode, that is probably why it made that episode that much more memorable, was because at the end you see the TARDIS like phasing in and out, and you're like,
exactly.
oh yes,
like finally something that we're connecting to. So do you think that what we're missing is, as we move along, is
sci-fi?
Yes. So well, let me take a step back from that, because you know there is science in this show, in this entire season. There's a lot of science. Yeah. We're just seeing it in a different way than we usually do. We're
missing the fiction part.
Yeah, and so there were points in time with Capaldi where that definitely happened, and I know that it made people very untoward, because especially with the Robin Hood and all of these things, it's like, well, where are you blending the science and the fiction to create that? And Ben, tell me, what do you think in terms of the overall ability of look, okay, so yes, we all know that we have our qualms about this, but the love of the connection to the TARDIS, the love of the connection to the Doctor, do you think that we were able to at least feel that, or have some of that nostalgic feeling through this?
Well, Nisha, our geek mom, do you mind if I jump in real quick? Because I don't want to leave the pattern of the misunderstood aliens and monsters for one moment.
Okay.
Let me just say this real quick. The thoughts why this pattern appears may be twofold. One, the number one reason why Chibnall is using it is subversion of expectations. We've already discussed that. It's not the real monster. This is the real monster. It's supposed to make you go, oh, because we've seen always before the alien or monster of the week is the bad guy, and now Chibnall's like, I'm doing something different. The alien or monster of the week isn't the bad guy. It may be these people are the bad guy. It's a subversion of expectations. But as we already discussed about the flaw, if it's repeated too much, it becomes boring and loses its creative power. But the other thing is, it may be also due to the zeitgeist lately of our current society of identification with monsters and villains. And hear me out on this. In the past 3 years, stories have focused on an idea about the monster and everything. This villain has been created to be sympathetic and to identify with those who feel like outcasts or social villains of society. Examples would be Ralph from Wreck-It Ralph, the creature from Shape of Water, or Elphaba from Wicked. The writing device is then used to highlight the real villain, which is typically a socially accepted character to subvert the existing power dynamics. As we have seen with the use of this device, a lot of these villains begin to have large followings in the LGBTQ community and ethnic groups lacking as much social power as those who are in power who brand these individuals as monsters, even though the ones in power are the real monsters, which brings up that a lot of times the real monsters, especially in some cases, are white guys. Especially with arachnids in the UK, you thought it was spiders, but it was really Jack Robinson. You thought it was the robots in Kerblam, but it's really this bomber guy named Charles Duffy, who's a janitor and is a white guy. It is a subversion of power structures. And that may be why he's repeating it.
And I also think that it's an extreme correction. I think it's a pull all the way to the opposite direction, which if you go middle ground and you kind of balance out the villains, whether they be female or male, that makes it more, more interesting and also not as predictable. And also it kind of goes into the diversity of having the villains be not just one gender, one race. It kind of changes that up, and it really does create diversity. And then now it looks racist because it's going against one group of people, which Doctor Who is not known to do ever.
Right.
because Doctor Who, it kind of changes up its villains all the time throughout seasons, whether they're male, female, alien, monster, blob on the floor, or just no villain at all. It's just a concept behind all these random people that are influencing other minds and all that stuff. It's never been like this season has, that it's literally just been one type of villain. They've all been pretty much male.
So I am
white
going
guys.
to 100% say no. That is completely incorrect. So I am going to say no. Yes, I was hoping Molly would pull up on that one too.
Yeah.
I am not really sure why that perspective seems to be prevalent in the mind, but I will tell you this: you're hyperfixating, you're hyperfocusing, and that's fine. Your point is great, and it's well made, but you're hyperfocusing because you need to. Some people just okay. So this is the way of storytelling and story arcs. We have to connect to something, which is the point that I was kind of leading into to get into this point now.
Mm-hmm.
We need to. That's what storytelling does, right? I mean, that's what a good film cinematography literature does. It helps us to be able to find something in and of ourselves that we then identify with, so that we can then go ahead and look at our own social consciousness. You just happen to be very either affronted or very much taken aback by the fact that in this particular season, in the retrospective, in the culture and society that we're in, that it happens to be very prevalent that it looks like it's a male gender white villain that we're being
because if you list off the villains of this season,
excuse me.
Hang on, let her finish.
I'm not, I've watched the season with you. I know very well what you're talking about, but I am going to tell you you have to look at the world from a different pair of eyes, guys. Look at the season from a completely different pair of eyes. I don't feel that they grandized anyone. As a matter of fact, I feel like all they did was take some level of historical precedent and put it into perspective in each of the episodes. In the Ghost Monument, we are literally, the villain that we're let out with is actually Art Malik, and he's Pakistani Asian, and he's absolutely a villain because he doesn't doing this for his own entertainment, and he could care less about the people that he is harming, hurting, mutilating, or torturing as he goes along in order to get his fix for his entertainment. But
he is a male character.
Okay.
So that's one.
And okay, so throughout the history of time, have we not gone ahead and in every other film that has and story arc that has gone before this, has it not been predominantly a specific gender, or have we not seen that? First of all, what I'm saying to you, this is not precedent setting. You just happen to think it is because you're looking at it because you're looking for.
Well, because that's what the season brings up is the
so
whole
you're bringing it up, but you're also bringing it up from the perspective of a male, and that's okay because I understand that. But this is in no way, shape, or form has this season 100% been about, number one, about victimizing the male white character. I'm sorry, but it has not. You're making an assumption that Charlie is anything. You just happen to see him and you think he's a white male. He could be Asian. He could be Mediterranean. He could be anything. You're just identifying because you think so. I want.
But Nisha. He is a white male, and let me say this real quick. I'm pulling up an article which is from the New Statesman, UK, in which and granted it's a white male writer, but he says this about bashing former fans as he's trying to praise Series 11. He says, most of this, despite the inevitable warnings from pink-faced men in their 50s who have never really gotten over the fact that Tom Baker doesn't love them anymore, that they were now planning to boycott the show.
Right. I read this article.
That's from the left.
Yeah, no, I read the
Mhm.
article, Nerdy Chap. I read it very well, and I listened to it, and I actually didn't love his perspective, though he actually really loved the season, because I also was like, you're missing the point. The point is that this is not about, and Molly, please weigh in on this. I want you to understand, so the entire listening audience understand, I am a middle-aged Asian woman. So
Mhm.
I have no. And if everyone here understands me, you all know that I absolutely have no idiosyncratic biases. You think you know that about me by now, right? It's not the way I
Mhm.
work. I don't believe in labeling, so it's not the way I view anything either. If we feel that Chibnall happened to hyper focus or hyper fixate on one particular gender, then guess what? It's happened many times before in Doctor Who. This is not the first time.
Okay,
If
but we're addressing
we
it in
feel
this
like
season.
the villain has been a white male, quote unquote, more times than it has in the past, and in terms of the percentage for a season, the answer is no, it has not. This happens to be a very short season, so therefore what you see seems to be that it's more of a percentage than when it's been. The point I'm trying to make, and again, Molly, weigh in, is that this is not precedent setting. Not in any form, not in any way, shape, or form is this precedent setting.
No, and in fact, I would use Graham as an example of a very positive role model. Him being an older
Well,
white.
he's the only one. He's one of the few.
No,
because even if they take you away, the dad wasn't a villain. You know, there's plenty of different characters.
Even in Ghost Monument.
Yeah. It's just I think what has people up in arms is that this season of Doctor Who was different than any of the other ones. And that part of it was the writing, part of it was the acting, part of it was just, she had 3 companions instead of just one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's very different. So everyone's kind of feeling a little unstable. Like, you're kind of just, an earthquake happens and it's a little shaky and people are going to try to digest it and pinpoint different things that relate to them, which is completely legitimate. Each and every person is going to have their own opinion, their own point of view of how the show affects them on a personal level. It also depends where you come from. I myself am also not technically Caucasian. There's a lot of differences in all of us, and I think that, and I can't speak for Chibnall, but I heard him talk a lot, and I think he really wanted to get beyond the old Who, and I think he tried, but I think he gets bogged down in his own formulas. And that happens to a lot of writers. Look at American, Horror Story or any other show where you have this continual longevity of a show. I think at some point the writing suffers because people want to go a certain direction, but through rewrites or edits or board members or advertisers or whoever it is that also influences the writing. Because keep that in mind too. Chibnall might have had a different script.
And Molly, I really love that you brought up that point. You actually made me make a connection that I haven't made until now. I think that a lot of Chibnall's reasoning for making these male villains, at least the way that we're seeing it, and again, this is my point of view. Again, this is completely my point of view, and this is my perception on the season so far. Is I think, like we said before, he has daddy issues. So why is that not the reason that he might be doing it? Not just
can you do me a very important favor?
Let me finish my point on it.
No, I want you to finish your point. Can you do me a very important favor? We don't use the term daddy issues, okay? Because that's actually that's a very negativism terminology. He probably may have some familial issues that have to do with his father. That I will agree with. That's certainly written very well into the storyline. But I won't say that because that's kind of I don't like it. I don't want anyone to feel like we're, like we're being oppressive or that we're speaking out of turn. So if you don't mind just changing that terminology a little bit, that would be cool.
Okay, so the familial issues
Familial.
issues that he's having is they're very male centric, and that I think that is why possibly he's making these characters be male centric, is because he has that and it could be completely subconscious, and it maybe doesn't have what do you call it? It's not something that maybe he realized until he wrote out the full season. And, there's a lot of different issues. And I'm not making it a point that he's doing it as a political statement or anything like that, because it's not. It's just a pattern that we've witnessed and we're seeing it. And because of the social climate that we live in currently, and a lot of the issues are being brought up that should have been brought up a long time ago. And there's a lot of people hating on the male gender for obvious reasons and for very good reasons, and having another person attack the male gender, it kind of creates this like what's going on? Why are they doing that? But and now that you brought that up, Molly, and you brought up a very good point, I'm able to make that connection, and maybe that's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Well, let me also say this of Doctor Who by the numbers, because I took the time to actually try and track the numbers of many I could remember. And as far as on-screen deaths you see throughout the season, for women, the number is 12, which in of itself is astounding. There are 12 victims, at least. And I can go over all that, and you can ask me how I counted that out. But 12 female victims. 5 victims are people of color who are male. So 5 people of color who are male. That includes Indian, Pakistani, black, etc. But as far as white, it's over 23 on-screen deaths. That is the highest number. Deaths that are in the show: security guard, woman who fell to earth, that old guy who gets killed off pretty quickly. The security guard of Jack Robinson in Arachnids in the UK. Astos, who gets killed in Saranga Conundrum real quickly after scolding the doctor and is the first victim of the Pating. Dan Cooper, who is a victim in Kablam. He's the guy who's working with Yaz. Charles Duffy, the actual bomber, villain. He dies by blowing himself up. In the New Year's Day special alone, which has the highest resolution, you have the Siberian warrior, who's the only one to fail in his mission. The police officer, Will, who is very sexist towards Lynn. The security guard, Richard, is his name. These are the actual credited names based on IMDb. Security guard Richard, who is the guy who is in charge of records in the police station, who dies. Farmer Dinkle is the name of the guy who is running the salvage yard shop. That's apparently the name of his character. He is killed by the Dalek. At least 12 white male military. There's probably more, but you can at least count 12. And then Zach, which may be the guy of the government center, the government communications headquarters, who, when the Dalek shows up, kills him, which also may be a little joke at BBC. And that's at least 18 in a single episode. So 18 plus 5 equals 23, and I'm not counting any others in that Dalek murdering all the military people, how many were actually white. But at least you can do a good, decent number count of going, yeah, there's at least maybe 10 soldiers, and most of them I'm seeing on screen are white. There's at least one woman I see who dodges, and so she's either A, dead, or B, knocked unconscious in that episode. But the vast majority on-screen deaths in resolution alone are white men. This, as Lewis said, whatever the reason may be, this is a pattern that is noticeable. It is a noticeable pattern.
But would you agree that Nerdy Chap, after the revelation that Molly brought up and seeing that pattern, what do you think that you think it could be that?
It could be what I was going to get into when I do bring up Chibnall's issues with let's say it the more PC way, issues with father figures or male authority figures. That could represent anyone from someone who's a boss to even your grandfather or whatever. Chibnall himself has done this a lot. And that may tie in of why we see the very male-centric view. So just to go beyond, real quick, just to go beyond Doctor Who alone, in those who have struggles with their fathers, you have Rory and Brian Williams in Dinosaur in a Spaceship, Power 3, and the PS extended thing, which allows Brian Williams to even see what happens to Rory and Amy's son. All of those are Chibnall-written pieces. Law and Order UK, you have a lot of questioning of male authority figures, which Chibnall used to write for. Are the police officers really doing good? What's the investigation, et cetera, et cetera. In Broadchurch, you have Mark and Danny Latimer, their father-son relationship. Joe Miller and Tom Miller, their father-son relationship. Joe Miller and Danny Latimer, a father relating to another guy's son.
Can I
Detective Inspector.
Real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so I get your point here, but if you look at Doctor Who through Adam Pine back to the original, there's plenty of white guys that got killed. I mean, I don't think the point is how many white people get killed.
Yeah,
I think that, you know.
The only reason I'm bringing this up is because this was this is an actual issue that was being brought up by a lot of people, especially the quote unquote male. And this is where I go, okay, I want to disbelieve them. I want to not agree with them. When all the male YouTube commentator people or alt-right are going, Doctor Who is against white men. They're against white men. But when I see the number and I see the pattern and I see them pointing it out, I can't help but agree with them. And I feel bad that I'm agreeing with them, but I see it is what I'm saying. It's there. So it's noticeable.
I understand your point of view. However, I think that we have people screaming. Why didn't they scream 10 years ago? Why didn't they scream 20 years ago?
That's exactly my point of view. This is not precedent setting. I'm going to say it again. And I was not dismissing anyone's point of view that was made before. I said, you can have that point of view. I'm saying to you that is not correct to think that this is precedent setting, because it's not. What I quoted to you is that and I am passionate about this, guys. I am quoting to you that in a season that has only so many episodes in it, it seems blatantly obvious because we're looking for something to be able to hyperfixate or focus on. And that's pretty typical for Doctor Who fans. That's what we do. But when you have a season that normally has 20-something episodes, that may have allowed the showrunner to filter things out in a different way, we certainly may not have seen it as blatantly in our face. But throughout the history of movie, TV, every genre of art and creativity in existence, this has happened. This is not precedent setting.
I mean, look at Tom Baker episodes. Look at all the other episodes.
Good gracious, yes.
I mean, good grief. I couldn't tell you how many people in unit died.
Again,
they were definitely all white.
Yeah, I know. And I agree with you. I completely see that point of view. I think you're right. We are hyper-focusing on this season, and we're making these issues more than they really are.
It doesn't make it right. Look, and I completely hear your point of view. I can't see your point of view because I can't see you. But I hear your point of view, and I hear where you're coming from, and I understand what you're saying, and especially, if that is how you identify, right?
Yeah.
It's going to make you feel like, hey, why are they picking on us so much? But at the same time, if you look at every single TV show on TV, if you look at all the movies, look how many people Tom Cruise kills in a film. A lot of them are white. Mm-hmm. Just saying. Yeah. So I mean, so I don't think it's specific just to Doctor Who, and for all right to be like, oh my God, white man, Mm-hmm. And look, it's the alt right. Look at the source.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we just got to be really careful of going down that slippery slope, right? Of the hyperfixation, because I think it takes us away from what we're really trying to look at.
Yeah.
Right? We're trying to look at the heuristic, holistic picture of this show. It fell short this year. We all felt that it fell short this year, but we all want to see it go somewhere, right? Because we love it. Right?
I agree. Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. Overall, I mean, like Chibnall this season, if I was to give Chibnall as a writer a rating for this as a showrunner,
Mm-hmm.
probably a 2 out of 10.
Talk about fitting 20 points into one story. I mean, good God, my poor brain, and my brain couldn't keep up with it half the time. So what is this, Chibnall? And I listen, these are extremely relevant points, and I certainly don't want anyone to think that I am in any way, shape, or form, please, ever poo-pooing what you're saying. As you've heard me the whole time, I've said, no, you're supposed to have your point of view. You have to see it through your eyes. I can't say anything through your eyes. But what we all have to understand is a lot of times what we identify with, what we connect to, and that was the point I made way at the beginning, is something that we then have to work through ourselves. The same way that we're saying, hey, Chibnall more than likely has had some experience with family issues and family concerns where there was the lack of a father figure or a strong, identifiable, conflict removing father figure. And so in this particular way, because he wanted to tell that story, that arc literally started from the very first episode and went all the way to the end. So while it looked like, it's extremely holistic, very much so. While it looks like he's continuously beating the story up, really what he's doing is piece by piece breaking the story apart over the entire thing. So there is an overarching story of where Ryan has finds stability in who he is, because we're introduced to Ryan. The first character we are introduced to is Ryan, and this is a child who has suffered loss and pain and challenge and suffering and oppression and loss and just every sense of loss of self-value and self-morality. And we watch this young man go through an experience where he learns to love in a way that he's never loved before. He learns to connect to who he is as a person like he's never done before. He learns to connect to people and socialize in a way he never thought he could. He learns to understand his own disability in a way he never possibly could. And guess what had to happen in this first season for Ryan to move forward? Ryan had to figure out who he was when he came to face with his father. And I think it was an absolutely necessary part of the overarching story of Ryan, who I believe, next to the doctor, is absolutely one of the main characters. And sadly, Yaz was not yet, and I'm certainly looking forward to that. But this was definitely, maybe everyone may think I'm wrong, but I'm looking at this big, huge picture. And I agree there's tons of deaths, and I get all of that, and I don't like it, and it's not something I love. But at the same time, I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at, how did Chibnall tell the story of Ryan? How did he tell the story of Yaz? Not well. How did he tell the story of Graham? Amazing.
Oh, wait a minute. You jumped over that real quick. How well did he tell the story of Yaz?
Not well, and I will definitely discuss that. That is definitely
and
something.
Ryan either. His disease is brought up. His condition is brought up maybe 3 times in the whole thing, and kind of overlooked after that.
Oh God, no, not at all.
Yeah.
No. Well, we actually did an overview of it, Joe and I, because we wanted to see. Maybe you didn't catch it, but so this is my neuroscience nerd brain, guys. Sorry about that. Because I'm going to find that stuff. No, dyspraxia his dyspraxia is actually mentioned in 50% of the episodes. Ryan discusses them. Ryan brings it out himself. And there's very careful phrases that are made. Even only to resolution, it's even in resolution. So no, it's there. You just don't realize.
There's character building. Ryan, the only character building that I saw was the first episode and the special, the New Year special.
And Chibnall too. Chibnall, he mentions it
a little bit. Yeah.
Actually, wait a minute. Let me say this real quick.
We'll save that for our companion discussion.
Because I will agree that it's been brought up a lot. His actual illness has been brought up a lot in the show. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, critics can say that it's also just being used in the same way that someone brings up whatever illness they have in conversation constantly just to make it a point, without actually, as Lewis is saying, show instead of telling.
So
This is kind of like the person who's like, I'm vegan. I'm going to tell you I'm vegan. Every conversation I have is vegan.
And they
So now
don't do that way.
I'm this guy. I have this illness. Just so you know, I have this illness.
It's just,
and that is just the one criticism of it.
No, it's personified in his actions. The fact that he was able to do as much as he was, the fact that he was able to slide onto that ground, pick up that little that machine gun thingy-majiggy, I forgot what it was called, and get up to be able to shoot at those robots, literally is a telling reference to his dyspraxia. The fact that he was able to climb up and down stairs, which he could not do before, is a telling reference to his dyspraxia. The fact that he is able to work with the console and the dashboard on a spaceship that he has never in his mind could have imagined he'd work with, but yet here he is doing it and literally mechanically fixing things, is telling of his reference to his dyspraxia. They're doing it by action. They're doing it by action. So they're telling the story in a way that people like can go, oh my God, look at these things that Ryan can do when he couldn't even ride a bike when we started.
Right.
So, and the fact that he could never even apply for the school he wanted to apply for. I forgot. Remember he told Yaz in the first episode that he would never do it because he didn't think he could do it. He didn't think that he would even slightly pass the what was it called? The where you have to do the we have to actually do. I forgot what it's called. The practicum. He didn't think he could pass the practicums for it, and so he never actually went through it with applying for this program. But here we have Orion, because we've seen him do all these things through physical action, who would probably now be able to pass that, ace it, if he ever wanted to do it.
Now,
so,
I'm sorry, I wanted to interject real quick, just so I could get a quick point across. Wouldn't that be dismissing everything that we brought up in the first episode? Because he's obviously not. It's not apparent that he's struggling to handle the console. It's not apparent that he's struggling to dip down and pick up that gun. It's not apparent that he's struggling to go up that ladder, other than him mentioning, "Oh wow, I just did that." That's the only mention that we have of the condition.
But why do we need to see it in that way? Why can't we just see him excelling at it?
We don't need to have it like that, but I would like to see him stumble on some things, not all things.
Oh, I agree with you. I get that point. Totally.
I'm like, it's just kind of dismissing it. It's like, oh yeah, you could be a superhero if you try. But
no.
And I loved how they tackled it in the first episode.
Do you think it's dismissing it, or do you think it's just being having it
bad writing?
Yeah, just.
I think it's bad.
I think it's more bad writing.
I think it's bad writing and not dismissing it.
I agree with you.
What I was going to say is something personal. Something personal for me. I'll bring this up. Something personal to me. I watched the Fox series The Following, which had Kevin Bacon playing a cop who had a pacemaker. In the first season, you can actually see him begin to struggle. He had to be concerned about his heart health while he's trying to chase down this serial killer. They made it a big deal and a major plot point of his character. By season 3, which was the final season, Kevin Bacon is running like he's perfectly fine and doesn't have to worry about the pacemaker. It's like they completely conveniently forgot that he had a pacemaker, except just to bring it up in conversation.
Preaching to the choir on this one, okay? I am so in agreement. Oh my God. How many things, we should do an entire show on how many wonderful story points that they bring up that never get closed. Yep. And we're like, what happened to that?
That would be a 3-episode series.
You know what never got closed? He has his whole story.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even get
and actually
started.
let me bring up something, because I want to talk about it, because I did do the research on it and all, so I can at least prove it in some sense. And that is, Yaz, and as you're saying, how Yaz has been neglected, despite what we got as advertising, the rhetoric of BBC saying Doctor Who with now a new female doctor, this is a new age, women are taking control. I want to bring up the pattern that I've said about disempowerment and victimization of women, so people don't think I'm just coming up with this out of the blue. Now, that was also based on that one article that I brought up from, and I will pull it up again, New Statesman. And you said you've read that article, so you know what I'm talking about. The guy mentions fridging. Well, for those who do not know what that term is, fridging is a comic book trope brought to attention by writer Gail Simone, whereby female characters are injured, raped, killed, or depowered as a plot device. And what I was going to say is, here we go. How many female characters are killed? I came up with 12. This is how I came up with it. 1, Grace O'Brien. We've all discussed Grace. Why did she have to die? But we've also discussed, reasons. But her death is the propelling thing for Graham and Ryan to be starting to work out their issues. Ramesh Sundur's sister, the guy who asks the Stenza, what happened to my sister? She's presumed dead. We don't know what happened to her. Frankie Ellish, the openly gay assistant to Jack Robinson, who gets basically either wrapped up by spiderweb or presumed dead by spider in arachnids in the UK. Eve Cicero, she dies heroically piloting the ship in the Sonanga conundrum, but at the same time, she dies because of her illness, and the one who completes the task is her brother. Her brother, Dirkus Cicero, is the one who actually finishes the job. Becca Savage, initially the villain, and that's in the Witchfinders, until she's taken over by the Morax Queen. Old Mother Twiston, let me say that again. Old Mother Twiston, accused of witchcraft, killed in trial by Becca, which is part of her own family, and then taken over by the Morax. Witch 1, killed for witchcraft accusation, Morax victim. Witch 2, killed for witchcraft accusation, Morax victim. These are the actual credits of how it's listed in IMDb. Witch 1, Witch 2. Trin, which is the dead mother being used as an incarnation of the Solitrack in It Takes You Away. She's just a dead mom. We don't know what happened to her. We just know she died. But the only way in which we know she shows up is by the Solitrack taking over her persona. The Song, which I already mentioned, the first death on screen in Battle of Ranskor Av Kolos to propel everyone to action. Asian female who just gets killed. And then 12, the unnamed female soldier killed in Dalek attack resolution, because you clearly see that she's talking to her commanding officer, and then you see her do a dive when there's an explosion. And from this point, it's basically assumed she's probably dead because Daleks exterminate all. That total death number is 12. But what about disempowerment? Well, white women and Rosa, the waitress and the wife of the husband, they're either racist or supporting racism. Dr. Jade McIntyre, first scolded by the doctor. This is the scientist in arachnids in the UK who is scolded by the doctor, but made a hero because of her knowledge of spiders. However, if you follow the line of thinking, if she becomes a witness against Jack Robinson as he runs for president in 2020, she will probably be easily discredited because, one, if she comes out saying that she worked on genetically mutated spiders, well, that already gets her in trouble with her company. And two, he said, well, it's your spiders who ended up in this landfill, not my problem. And so she'll be discredited. Mabley is initially a pushover to the doctor after Astos dies. She gets better, but initially it's like, doctor's like, I'm the doctor, I'm taking over now. Okay. And Dinio, she's the deceived religious zealot in Battle of Ranskor Av Kolos who believes the Stenza is a god. And then definitely this one, the one that makes me want to scream at Chibnall, Lynn. She is a victim of mind control or mind rape, tentacle rape since it's a squid, by a Dalek. That woman is primarily a victim. They make it out to be that she fights the Dalek off. But what actually happens? She does say the Dalek, after some struggle, leaves her be after completing the tank for the Dalek to be back in its tank to go exterminate. So it just casts her aside. Is she allowed to kill this Dalek? No, because it attaches itself to Aaron, Ryan's father, and Ryan's the one who saves his father. The doctor sends the Dalek out to like an exploding star, but Lynn didn't have any action in that. This is a woman with no agency. That's the way I see it. Of course, we can discuss differently. You also have the female officer in that episode who just sees Dalek on Lynn's back and just stands and screams. She's a officer. She could have called back up, anything. She just, and then you just see her unconscious on the ground, tied up.
We're definitely going back to the writing.
It goes all to the writing.
And it's all back down to the writing.
And the last two I have to bring up that made a lot of fans tick at Chibnall. Kate Stewart and Petronella Osgood and her Zygon twin, all victims of the unit shutdown because of government budget cuts.
Yeah.
To make a Brexit joke.
Oh, I know. See, that one pissed me off very much, and I do agree with you on that. I mean, from my point of view, I actually kept the list just as much as you did. I think that some of them were actually just straightforward what they are. They're plot points, and like I said, if you look back at the history of Doctor Who and pretty much any science fiction show that's ever existed.
The red shirts. You always have the red shirts.
Yeah, you're going to have the red shirts. You totally got it. Well, that's exactly what it was. But, certainly.
Well, the one thing is, let me bring up this too, not just to say we've seen women die in Doctor Who before, but specifically Chibnall. Chibnall's writing only. I looked into his other works. You have Lisa Howlett, who's in the Cyberwoman episode of Torchwood. She is the Cyberwoman, she's a half-naked black female who's enslaved by the Cybermen.
Yep, I remember.
You have the unnamed pizza girl in that same episode that is implanted with Lisa's Cyberwoman personality, but is only there to die when the Torchwood goes, oh, she wants to upgrade Ianto? Kill her. Gwen Cooper in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Torchwood. Gwen is paralyzed by James Marsters' Captain John Hart, locked in a crate in which she will die of organ failure if not found in 2 hours, and then after escaping is used as a hostage by John, handcuffing himself to her and swallowing the key after finding out that the sought-out item he wants is actually a bomb. Gwen is saved, though. The bomb was created by a former female lover of John, who all we know is she is killed by him. So therefore, a dead level propels the plot. We've seen this before from his writing, and I can go on.
There's a lot of patterns in that, but we're running late on this one, so let's finish it up already. Let's close up with a quick, just a fire gun wrap up. What your final thoughts are? What your one point that you want to push across 100%, and what do you want in the next season?
I guess I'll go first. I want to see stronger writing. I want to see less predictability. I'd like to kind of get back to some adventures that help develop the characters a bit further. And I like, more than anything, just better writing.
Yeah. I agree. I think that honestly, I want more space. I want more sci-fi. I want more random creatures, and I want to see the TARDIS.
Yes, more TARDIS.
That's honestly my biggest critique and what I want. We've beat the horse dead with the points that we disliked about this season, but definitely 100%. I want to see the TARDIS more, a lot more. How about you, Nerdy Chap?
Well, I'm going to say this. Since we didn't talk about the other writers, let's give them some credit here. The sad thing is most of them are white. Mallory Blackman is a black British female. She's the one who's responsible for Rosa, but there's also the writing credit of Chris Chibnall, so that was co-written. You have Vinay Patel, the British Indian man, Demons of the Punjab. That, again, I think that is the best episode of the entire season 11 because it's handled best. It actually has a diverse writer. And you end off with Yaz knowing more about her grandmother, Breen. At the end of the day, it's actually a female narrative arc storyline. So there's your diversity. And then Joy Wilkerson, who is a British white female. The rest, Tim Price, Welsh white male, Pete McTeague, British white male, Ed Heim, white male, and Chris Chibnall, which we've talked about the most, British white male. So you have mostly white men writing for a female-led doctor. So what I'm trying to say is, despite Doctor Who having a female doctor and bragging about its diversity, the truth is that most of the writing team is white, male, and the narrative of Series 11 is male-centric. And therefore, what I would like to see is Moffat. Do I miss him? Yeah, because at least I know at Moffat, the doctor would be kick-butt taking names, much like River, much like Kate Stewart, much like even Osgood, got awesome. Bill got awesome. Even like Bill's a victim, but she still had a good happy ending at the end of the day. Clara Oswald, she's going off traveling the universe in the TARDIS. She has agency over when she decides to die. You have a lot of powerful female characters writing for Moffat. I want Moffat writing female Doctor Who, and Chibnall take a back seat to that and actually give us a doctor who remembers her experience of the Time War and is therefore knows the stakes, consequences, and is more of take charge and control like we've seen before, and is more of the doctor that people want instead of victimization of women and a male-centric focus.
Yeah, I agree. How about you, Nisha?
Okay. What am I looking forward to? What are we looking for the next season? Listen, the writing was very lacking. It's the one thing everyone has agreed on. I do believe that I am, from history and time immemorial, the 99.999% of the writers for Doctor Who have been white males, and we are now slowly moving into a space where we can see a more diverse written philosophy. I've looked at some of the shows that are coming up for the new seasons, and at least 2 or 3 of them are actually written by writers who are notable writers who are from other cultures. So, and also the show has been taken to other parts of the world. Not everything was. We see that they're filming in Africa. I don't know if you guys know that. So there actually is some wonderful change coming. So I wanted to see that kind of change, and I believe it's coming. But again, as Molly had pointed out earlier today, change can only come as quickly as BBC and their advertisers and their financial supporters will allow change to come. So there are certain things and certain limitations that I suppose are sitting behind the story that we can't see. I'm willing to give it the chance that it needs to be able to grow into its more strongly, and to be able to blend social awareness with science fiction, with risk, with the boldness that we were promised, with the Doctor who completely emerges from this newness of being a new Doctor to embracing the history of being the Doctor. Like you said, this amazing being who has challenged all beings, creatures far and wide throughout the universe, and has come out on the other side of it victorious. That is the being that I am definitely looking forward to seeing, which I know Jodie can play. Jodie can play that. So I'm looking at them being able to, there will be emergence of newness, but I am looking forward to that bold brashness that we were promised to be able to be given to us. And I want to keep the social awareness. I have no issue with it, but I certainly want people to understand that if we're having such wonderful debate and such passionate discussions amongst friends, for goodness sakes, then that tells you the value of the show. The value of the show is that we all can be so, to have sparked the nerdy chap, to have gone to that length of research, it's impressive in and of itself. So does that tell you that, you may not have loved it, but goodness gracious, it made you think. It made you think. It made you question. It made you angry. It made you happy. It made you a lot of things. So while the ratings may not be great, it is doing, to some extent, what it's supposed to do.
Here's here.
Yeah. So I just want to see the emergence of that bold, brash, strong, passionate, emotional, caring, and warrior that the Doctor is. And definitely the TARDIS. Yay, TARDIS.
Yay. So
I know, I should have played it. Oh my God, I was trying to find it to play it at the end of the episode.
That's the wonderful thing of podcasts. I can insert it right there.
Insert here. Let's let me play.
Right. But that's fantastic. Yeah, Nisha, I agree. That wraps up this episode, honestly. Thank you guys, honestly, Nerdy Chap and Molly, for joining us.
Of course.
And next week, we're going to be tackling The Companions, which is going to be a phenomenal episode. And if you don't know anything for Man Bites Media, you're able to check us out on manbitesfilm.com. And that has a link to both our podcast feeds and our YouTube channel. And Nisha, where can they find you at Diversely Geek besides every social media out there?
Pretty much every social media out there. You're going to find us on our YouTube channel as Diversely Geek. And we have some wonderful new stuff coming up there. I can't wait till you guys get a chance to see what we have coming. Molly's going to be part of that because we have some pretty interesting, something kind of akin to what we did with our New Year's episode. We tried it. It was actually successful and it was fun, right? So we're going to be doing it again, but just wait till you see the shows that we're going to be bringing to you live from there. Then we're going to be, you can definitely find us on our podcast, Diversely Geek Discusses. Good gracious me. I can't even say my own name. Discusses. You'll find us at iTunes and Spotify and Google, and I believe we're going to be on Alexa soon, and Stitcher, and a whole bunch of other places. We are really picking up our listenership, and I really heartily recommend that everyone get on and actually give a listen, because we finally have all 4 of our shows up and running. Yes. So, and they're very exciting. We're getting great feedback on them because we've been doing some market surveys out there. So yeah,
and definitely don't just listen. Don't just do that. Comment, subscribe, and share with everybody out there, both of our channels and both of the podcasts that we have, because there's a lot of amazing content that we're going to do. And obviously our crossover episode, which is this one. So thank you, Nisha, so much for leading the show and taking care of it.
And being so passionate, right?
Yeah, right?
I know. People are not used to me being passionate and going, well, listen here. But I had to do it with this episode. I knew it was going to happen, right?
You had to pull the mom card out on us.
I had to pull the mom card.
But thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take care.
Night, everyone.